Hi, good evening, everybody. It's A.J. Heightman, the Editor-in-Chief of JEMS, coming from our San Diego office, and glad to be with you. And tonight we have with us Chief James Hooley from Boston EMS over on the East Coast, so we've got you covered from East to West Coast. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, AJ.
Hey, we decided to have this Google Hangout because the producers of the really highly acclaimed Hopkins, Boston Med, and New York Med decided to film in Boston, and they launched last Sunday, Save My Life Boston Trauma. It's a 6-week series, and it features a couple of Boston's major trauma centers, and there's so many centers of excellence that it was just interesting to watch, and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of unparalleled because this time around, versus some of the other shows, they showed a lot more of EMS, and they actually followed your units, and I thought that was pretty interesting. And then I understand from you that they were so impressed with what they saw that they approached the city about doing a separate series. So tell us about that.
Yeah, they originally planned this to be a show. I believe it was going to be titled Golden Hour, and it was going to focus on from the time a patient arrived in the emergency room and follow them up to maybe the operating room or follow them to an ICU. And just as they were getting ready, they made their deals with the different hospitals and got the permissions to do that. And then they realized that, well, some of that golden hour extends into the time in the field, from the time the injury or the illness occurs. And they came and they sought our participation in that. And so, after obtaining the necessary approvals and permission from the city and through the legal departments and making sure we had good privacy releases in effect for our patients, we partnered with them on that first show, and then they spent so much time with some of our supervisors hitting some of those calls that were likely to wind up in those 3 trauma centers that they're featuring in the Save My Life show, that they said that they were really impressed working pre-hospital, and they wanted to do a show on us. And so they came back and they talked to us about that.
That's great. For those folks that are watching, you can tweet us on hashtag JEMS Talk and send any questions that you want in, and we'll try and address those for you. We're also going to be checking Facebook, but for our JEMS Facebook page, I think it's better for you to be on the JEMS hashtag JEMS Talk. Chief, I've been a friend for a long time. I've been in Boston many times. You're a very busy system. You respond to over 320 calls a day. Am I right?
Yeah, we average a typical weekday over 320 priority 1, 2s type of calls, and that usually results in about 220, 230 transports. But that's a typical day. When we hit a couple of 90-degree days earlier this week, that'll bump up by about 50 in both categories, and that's not including special event days like the 4th of July or Marathon Monday, First Night, some of the days when we're a lot busier system-wide as well.
Well, I found the coverage that you got, and I commented a lot on Facebook that I was really proud of the crews. Many of them I've ridden with, the way they handle themselves with Save My Life Boston Trauma. So it's going to be interesting because beginning this Saturday, then there's going to be a segment on Boston EMS on Saturday, and then on Sunday it'll be the Save My Life Boston Trauma. So it's going to be a Boston weekend. Am I right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. The hospital series obviously is going to follow up patients, individuals through the healthcare system, through emergency care. We will too, but in our show, the show that's featuring called Boston EMS, it's we end when we get to the emergency room in that one. They're not continuing filming on inside on our show. Our folks were pretty excited about doing that when we pitched the idea, because first we had to, we thought, long and hard, we consider our patients our utmost, responsibility, and that, they should have some reasonable expectation of privacy all the time, and so showing up with a videographer, how do we do that? And so, we got very good assurances from ABC that, first off, that patients would be given a chance to give verbal consent right from the beginning. And then afterwards, that would be followed up at some time later with them actually being given a written consent to sign off on. So, if somebody felt that they weren't, in their right mind when they made that decision the first time, they still had a chance to get out. We also, although we had over 70 people from our service who were interested in letting the videographers ride with them, that means we had a lot who weren't. So if people didn't want it, nobody had to. If you and I, AJ, were partners and you were keen on the idea, but I was like, I don't think so, then that was it. They'd go ride with somebody else. We also wanted some assurances that if we pulled up on a scene, depending on what was going on, we didn't want to always have to rely on the patients to do it. If we felt, if any of our crew said, hey, you better, holding the camera, they did that right away. If the police felt that, or if a fire chief who were in an incident had any question, they just stopped. They immediately stopped. We could work out afterwards why, was it reasonable or was it not? It didn't matter. But our job, the last thing we wanted was our crews have to be out there negotiating for the film crew. We were out there trying to do our job and let them kind of be more of a flying.
And how did the Boston police take to all of this? Do they know when there's going to be a film crew on with the ambulance?
Yeah, no, we notify, and we really, I'm not aware of any issues on the Boston EMS show that we had there.
So this is going to be beginning Saturday. It's going to run for 5 weeks, and there's going to be 2 30-minute segments every Saturday night beginning at 9 Eastern time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they call them 2 separate shows.
Back-to-backs.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And so we'll see different crews that are on there. And, I was impressed with the crews. I've always been impressed with your crews. And let's talk a little bit about that, because I've been a big advocate of both yourself and Seattle running fewer paramedic units than BLS units. And I think probably as we're talking now, you probably have just 5 ALS units for the city and probably 20 BLS units. And I've always seen that to really work well. Your city as well as Seattle always impressed me that you have some 20-year medics, you got medics that are in their 60s, and you have a high call volume. I'm sure some people would like everybody to be all ALS, but I know when I sit with the Eagles group, there's a real concern about skill decay. So what have you found with your paramedics being really busy?
Well, obviously our BLS and ALS are both very busy, but I think some of the benefit they get to not just skill retention, but their ability to practice it. I know when we followed over the years, when you've read like maybe some systems where they would have questions about, well, do we let medics do ET tubes anymore? Should we just stick to something else? Do we let them intubate somebody under the age of 14? There really hasn't been an issue here, and they've got we're able to maintain high 90s for per first high 90 percentiles for first pass for an endotracheal tube, and I really do think a lot of that is repetition. Seeing a lot of different patients, a lot of different anatomies, knowing the ones where I might be a little bit more cautious on this one. Also, they have a very high rate of sensitivity and specificity for calling STEMIs in the field to alert the cath labs going in, and I think that's just because they get to practice it more.
Riding the streets, I guess we have the brown shirts and we have the white shirts, right?
Yeah. But I mean, there's what some of the things that make it possible for the mix here too is we're fortunate in Boston. We're 47 square miles, which really isn't that big compared to most cities, and yet we have 11 teaching hospitals. We have 6 trauma centers, if you include one that's just pediatrics, children's, and so our transport times are relatively short, even from the more distant part of the city. Like where I live, I'm probably 8 miles away from 2 trauma centers. And I'm one of the farthest parts of the city.
Well, I've always found your EMTs, I've always been proudest of being an EMT and a paramedic, but for the most part, 80% of what we do is basic life support, and your EMTs just do an exceptional job. I watched the other night when they put a splint on somebody that had a horrible fracture, and I thought, God, I've been with crews in some parts of the country where they don't even know where their splints are anymore. They just use pillows. So it's a credit to your folks that they're good EMTs first, and anytime I've jumped in the back of a unit and saw BLS and ALS, they work together real well. We have a question from Sean Brooks about how many Boston BLS providers also carry a P card. You do have some that are paramedics that are waiting for positions, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point. So that's, the exact number off the top of my head, I would guess is probably about 60 or so, and that's in addition to the mix. So we have probably about 69 or so, 65 paramedics working right now, about 240, 250 EMTs, and at least 60 of those have paramedic certification, and there's many more that are in programs. So they're well educated, even for what they're doing right now. And yeah, certainly we're trying to work on some routes to advance them right now too, because they're doing high level care at the BLS level. I just if you went back in Boston a dozen years ago, we approached the state, Commonwealth of Massachusetts Office of EMS, which regulates DPH, which regulates licensed ambulance services here, for things like assisted albuterol, or the ability to give nitro to somebody, the ability to at the BLS level, the training, and we did a demonstration project for that, showed it, proved the efficacy and the safety of it, and that became the standard across the state. The same way with EpiPens, the same way with Narcan. 2006, up until 2006, you had to be a paramedic or a nurse to administer Narcan in this state. Again, we went out because our folks in the field, our EMTs in the field, recognized there was a need. Thank God they did back then, because with the epidemic of opiate overdoses going on right now. So they went out, we did a demonstration project, showed it, that became the standard of care across the state, and that quickly spread to other first responders and families. So I was going to say, EMTs have done the BLS, the ground up in our system really drives the system here.
Well, I know from FDNY as well, they use an awful lot of advanced skills for their BLS personnel, and nebulized treatments and CPAP and those things, and they've actually been able to shave calls away that would normally not get an ALS unit that now does get an ALS unit, because the BLS crews are handling some of the lower acuity chest pains, etc. And I think that's the way to go. In London, they have EMTs that are doing 12 lead EKGs and taking them to STEMI centers. So I think it's the best way to use your skills, actually, and the best way to deploy your personnel. We also had a question here from Sean that asked about what percentage of your 911 calls do you think are ALS?
Ooh,
typically it's about 15–20% in most systems. I don't know if it's any different in Boston.
Yeah, the call types as they go out, they're probably in that range. The ones that wind up being transported at the ALS level a little bit less, because like I said, there's a lot of situations where a BLS crew may get there first, and either due to close proximity to a hospital, they may cancel the medics, or they do an evaluation and they feel like, well, come in as say an unconscious person, but it was maybe somebody a little bit inebriated who was sleeping on a park bench, and they were able to check on them. So we may roll the ambulances from both levels, ALS and BLS, more than always results in a transport.
Well, let's talk a minute about the Boston Marathon, because that was in the back of everybody's mind, I think, from emails I was getting when we were talking about this. What kind of lessons did you learn after the marathon?
Well, some of the big ones that we learned, one was that obviously the training works, and by that the training, not just the training that every EMT and every paramedic gets, but we spent an awful lot of time over the years prepping for a day like that, doing MCI drills, practicing triage, practicing, we've used BTLS, PHTLS, ITLS, whichever different standards around that just call for, load and go, rapid stop bleeding, open airway, cisventral go. We always practice those in drills. And so when the bombs went off that day, it was almost like muscle memory for most of our folks. It really just kicked in. Nobody had to tell them. We went from an event where we set up a very large medical support with medical volunteers and physicians. We can run labs in the tents, check people's sodiums, check their temperatures, cool them off, dunk them if we need to. And that pretty sophisticated. With a lot of it, with the idea is that we're going to keep you out of the emergency room. We're going to keep you from clogging the hospitals. But when the bombs went off in 2013, they didn't just have to get to emergency rooms, they had to get to operating rooms. So we had to be able to quickly prioritize the people who had the best chance of living, getting them out first, and then distributing them across hospitals, not overwhelming the closest ones. And that was just that drilling, that training that we did over the years. People executed it. They executed it very well. I'm very proud to say that.
Now, you had in the span of a second, really, didn't you have like 16 amputations occur?
I think in total it was 16 amputations that resulted from the event. Some were frank amputations, and several were, just about. There was still some, but for all intents and purposes, they were, yes.
Well, in the preamble to this Google Hangout, I made some comments about Boston and really being ahead of the curve. And, in 2008, Dr. Irwin Hirsch was a really popular surgeon who was a Vietnam surgeon, and he contacted me and said, look, this is kind of ridiculous that we're not carrying tourniquets all over the country. We've been carrying them in Boston, and I've been pushing that since the late 70s and 80s. And so, you guys have been carrying latex tourniquets. I have the article here, which is basically Return of the Tourniquets from August of 2008. And there were only 8 amputations in the year that he reported on, but he said that they were all verified saves where people could not have regular control. And so tell us some of the things that have happened since then. You're still carrying the latex. I was there recently. You're still carrying the latex and the surgical clamps, but you've added some commercial things, right?
Oh, sure. I mean, one of the reasons we started with the latex is that's what was available back in 1978 or earlier. It was surgical tubing that could be improvised to do it. It was demonstrated. They'd show us a technique in there, and God bless him, Dr. Hirsch showed us movies from doing it in Da Nang and China Beach, so we knew it worked. We always carried a few in each jump kit, and we had some on the shelves. We had them in our disaster kits. Obviously now since then, with the advances in trauma care and surgery that have been made, in the military really, and those borrowing lessons now from the military now, like we did back in Vietnam, the commercially available, like the CAT tourniquets, I forget all the brand names, but the nylon with the Velcro, that was a lot easier to get. And the big benefit now for those is that you can self-employ those if you need to. So I mean, as a consequence, we do issue. That's a piece of standard issued equipment to all of our personnel. I know I believe most of the Boston police have been issued devices as well. So, and again, even if it isn't for them or for their buddy in a rescue type thing, it just increases the odds that you're going to have tourniquets at the scene if you need them. We also deployed kits, hemorrhage control kits that have both types, the tubing and the Velcro. The CAT inside the kit's massive. We call them mass hemorrhage kits. We also have some, what do you call it, like the Cheeto gauze and some of those other in there, as well as some chest seal and a few other things to help for trauma. We deploy those right now in the supervisor vehicles, the medic trucks, special events, special operations units, and we're going to be rolling them out into all of our BLS trucks as well. it was just a matter of funding. Thanks to the mayor's office, we secured some grant funding for that, and so we're going to increase that as well.
That's great. We always learn, and so you could have a scene where you have a medic who has a couple of tourniquets available. You have a police officer, and I'm sure multiple officers at a scene that have tourniquets now available. So, really, I give you credit because Dr. Hirsch was the one who really beat me into doing the article and really pushing it. And long before the Hartford consensus, he was talking about the merits of it. And I have to mention for our viewers, unfortunately, right after that article was published, we lost Dr. Hirsch to an unfortunate accident. It was a boating accident, actually, and that was a big loss for Boston. Our hearts hung pretty low for that, but he made a major contribution in that August article that I think spread. And I still have some people who are resistant to carry tourniquets, and actually, if you go back to that August article, there was a section in there where there was a police officer who was shot between his patella. And for those people that argue with me all the time that they don't need tourniquets, there was absolutely no way. Dr. Hirsch, as a surgeon, told me there was no way they could control the bleeding on that police officer by direct pressure. It had to be a tourniquet. And even though there were only 8 cases in a city the size of Boston, those were 8 confirmed lives that were saved by that advanced trauma care.
No, that's absolutely true. Like I said, we have a lot of tools in our box. Some people are very good at direct pressure and finding pressure points, and and there's other devices out there control. But if they got to quickly go to it, they won't hesitate.
Well, my opinion personally is with active shooter and all of these fanatics that are out there, all we need is one garbage can bomb to hit a pedestrian, and they could lose 3 or 4 extremities. And just like the military, every soldier carries 2. Every soldier next to him is carrying 2. So if he has 3 extremities that are lost, we have 3 tourniquets there. So it's intuitive for me that we should have 3 to 4 tourniquets on every ambulance in the country. Now, we were talking about your units, and a lot of people commented when I posted some of the photos of your units. You use the big medium-duty chassis, and I know some people may not like them because of the ride's a little bit harder, but those are big, beautiful bronze with big boxes, and I'm sure the maintenance people love it because when I was an operations person, I had a couple of medium duties, and boy, you couldn't beat the savings on brakes and some of those things and suspension. So, comment a little bit about those trucks because we're going to see those over the next couple of weeks, and people are going to wonder why does Boston use such big trucks?
Yeah, well, like I say, some of those trucks are actually a few years old. We're in the process of trying to get a new order in. We're evaluating different ones, but we had quick history. So I started in the late 70s, and we had the boxes, a lot of them mounted on vans, and the front ends didn't hold up too well at all. And then we went to the pickup truck style with the box in the back, and that did better. It gave us more room, a little bit more payload, but we were still, as you said, going through brake suspensions and parts at a pretty good clip. 2003, 2004 is when we started switching into the medium-duty trucks, and the vehicles, the platforms, the engines, all that holds up very well. The trade-off, as you also mentioned, is the rides can be a little bit less forgiving. It takes a lot of tuning of the suspension, and they're work trucks. They're not really built for comfort, or in the load heights we have to try to watch with that too. One of the things we're trying to do to help with that and help reduce injuries is transition to. We hope shortly to be able to transition all our stretches to the power lift ones from Strikers, where we're going to go with one to help with the loading, help some of the wear and tear on us, but to that last couple of inches when you're trying to get up into some of these bigger trucks. But that doesn't mean that we're slave to that particular platform. We're currently evaluating a couple of different platforms right now, and again, it's all trade-offs. You want crew comfort, but we also want just enough space in back so we can transport at least 2 patients, who put somebody down on the bench as well too. But some of the things that helped us on the marathon that day was a lot of the patients, 30 patients, were identified as red, and we had to move a lot of people out in a short period of time, and so we doubled up with a lot of patients. So we want to make sure that we can still do that. But we're looking at other trucks if we can get ones with lower load height, more comfortable for the crews who are living in them, you know, for 8, 10-hour shifts, 16 if they're on a double, and you know, try to make things a little more comfortable for them. And that's our goal this year.
Well, you know, I think what the viewers are going to see, another thing that I attribute to Boston, is you guys had all of the reflective and colored striping years before people thought that was fashionable. And, you know, some people look at it and say, you know, should we do that? But, you know, riding in the streets of Boston, it's a colonial city. It's not an easy city to get around. You got a lot of traffic circles and, you know, beautiful cobblestone streets. So I'm sure the medium-duty trucks with their turning radius are probably a benefit there as well. So I just wanted the viewers to get an idea what they're going to see, and when they wonder, you know, why do you do that, they have an inkling for that. So any interesting anecdotes about what we're going to see in the show, or you want to leave that as a surprise for us?
Well, you know, I got to be honest with you. We weren't really given like any access, early access or previews of the show. The understanding was that, you know, ABC News is a standards and practice division, and that makes sure that everything, you know, conform to our requests. However, we do know that they were on, you know, several, you know, high-profile calls that, you know, were either near tragedies, some that unfortunately were had some tragic endings. But one of the things that they did on this show, and I'm interested to see, is that we didn't want. In the first show, they were really trying to focus on, for the hospital show, people who are going to be going to the operating rooms, the ICU. So really the worst off patients. So we didn't want people to think that, hey, 90% of the calls we do in Boston are people hit by cars, people on the trains, people shot, stabbed. In reality, that's about 1% of the calls we do. And I can't imagine there's too many systems that are much different from that. The majority of our calls are you know, medical. They could be chronic disease, chronic illnesses. They could be overdoses. People with minor trauma from fights, work-related. So what we want to do too is not just put them out in one section of the city. We asked them to, you know, consider riding in different parts, and they did. You know, areas where we have single-family homes, 2 families, but also, you know, downtown, where they're not just going to maybe encounter several homeless persons with medical problems in a row, but get a good mix of everything. Because we really took, we sort of took this as a responsibility to hopefully we're going to represent EMS as the community well, professional EMTs, volunteer EMTs, but people who've decided to do this for a living, full-time EMTs and paramedics. You know, we want them to be proud of the series. You know, and to know that it isn't always the 6 o'clock news shots that we see in the trucks. It's a lot of repeat patients, a lot of subtle things that our people pick up on. You know, that they're able to report to a hospital and maybe get the person some follow-up care and maybe prevent them from having to go to the hospital again.
Well, as a person who's been in EMS for a long time, I'm really proud of the visibility. I'm really happy about it. We're great fans of the Night Watch show, and you get the personality of the New Orleans crews. They have their own unique language and personality, and they're all clinical experts, and so we were very proud of that. And knowing your crews and knowing the EMTs and the medics from Boston, I'm sure you'll do us proud. And it's good for the public to be able to see what we're up against. It's a tough job. We're busy all the time. We're taking care of everybody at their worst moment. We get very little praise, and hopefully the community will really begin to respect based upon what they're seeing from your show as well as from Night Watch. So I want to thank you for spending time with us tonight, and thank of all our viewers. This is going to be archived on JEMS.com, and you know, we really want to thank you and Boston for allowing us to do this. So thank you, Chief.
No, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to you know, speak a little about the show, speak about our system, but more importantly about our personnel who
and tell the crews, you know, it's tradition when you're in JEMS magazine or when you're focused on TV that you gotta buy ice cream for the other crews. So tell the crews that are featured that they better dig into their pockets the next time I'm there and our crews are there, and buy us some ice cream. All right?
Oh, sure. No, we'll take good care of you. You know, you're welcome back, and you know, thank you for, like, not just us, but highlighting EMS systems around the country, urban, rural. you know, spreading that news around the country is very important.
Great. Well, thank you, Chief, and tell your crews to be safe. We love them.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night. Good night, AJ.